I was in my chair in the library trying to read when the phone buzzed. It was my only child, my daughter Clara. Her tone was clipped, chilly, as she said, "Mom, we're off to South America tomorrow. I've sold your cabin by the lake and the old Chevy. We had a big investment opportunity. Talk soon." And just like that, the line went dead. 48 years of raising her, of putting her first, and she tossed me aside like an old newspaper. But I took a slow, deep breath, and a small smile touched my lips, because there was a little something my darling daughter didn't know. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm 72 years old, and up until that phone call, I really thought I knew my own daughter. If you want to find out what she didn't know, make sure you follow my channel so you don't miss the rest of my story. I became a widow 8 months ago. My Henry, my husband of 48 years, passed from a sudden stroke while we were watching the morning news, just as we had every day for what felt like a lifetime. That morning, he'd brought me my tea, just a splash of milk and a buttered scone. He'd kissed the top of my head and said, "Morning, my Ellie." Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. Since he passed, Clara had been around more, or so it seemed. She'd stop by a few times a week. She handled all the funeral arrangements and helped me sort through his things. She even insisted I get a full physical. "Mom, you have to look after yourself now that you're on your own," she would say, with a smile I mistook for love. But I see now it was a smile of convenience. The lake cabin had been our haven for decades. Henry and I bought the land with our savings when Clara was just a girl, and we built most of it with our own hands. Every summer, every long weekend, we were there. We made a lifetime of memories, celebrating anniversaries and 4th of Julys. Clara would bring her friends from school, and later, she brought her husband, Richard. I'd spend the whole time cooking for everyone, doing dishes, washing towels. It was our family's special place. I never imagined she could look at it and only see dollar signs. And the car, that old 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. Henry treated that car better than he treated himself. He'd be out in the garage every weekend, tinkering, polishing the chrome until it gleamed. He always parked it in the same spot on the driveway. Clara knew how much that car meant to me. It was the last piece of him I had left. You could still smell his old spice on the upholstery. When she hung up on me, I just sat there in that worn-out armchair, surrounded by the quiet of my empty house. And for the first time in 8 months, I didn't feel the urge to cry. Something shifted inside me, a sense of calm I hadn't felt since the day Henry died. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had pushed to the very back of my mind. A few days before he passed, Henry had come in from the garage holding a dusty cardboard box sealed with tape. "Ellie," he'd said, "put this in the back of your closet. If something should happen to me, open it. But only when you feel you're truly ready." I'd put it away, my mind already cluttered with other things. After the funeral, with the grief and the endless paperwork, I'd completely forgotten about it. But it was there, waiting for me. The librarian came by to tell me they were closing soon. I nodded and smiled, but my thoughts were a million miles away. I was thinking about that box, about the ice in Clara's voice, and how her husband Richard was almost certainly the mastermind behind this whole thing. He'd never cared for me. He always saw me as an obligation. I left the library and walked to the bus stop. I didn't have a car anymore, according to my daughter. But as I stood there on the curb, I couldn't help but let out a little chuckle. There was a certain justice to it all. Clara thought she had stripped me of everything. But what she didn't realize was that Henry, my dear, quiet Henry, had always been a man who thought 5 steps ahead. The bus pulled up, and I found a seat by the window. I watched the town roll by, the little shops, the houses with their porch lights blinking on, people hurrying home from work, all of them with their own little dramas, their own little secrets. I had one of my own now, and I was about to uncover it. When I got back to the house, I walked straight to my bedroom closet. I pushed aside the winter coats, and there it was. The cardboard box, exactly where I'd left it. My hands were trembling just a little as I pulled it out. I could feel the weight of several file folders inside. Henry had written my name on top in his familiar, neat script. I sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for so many years and took a steadying breath. The evening light was fading, and the house began to fill with the comfortable shadows that no longer felt so lonely. I opened the box carefully, like it was a precious gift. What I discovered inside was about to change absolutely everything. What was in that box nearly knocked the wind out of me. It was filled with legal papers, property deeds, stock certificates, and a handwritten letter from Henry. My eyes immediately filled with tears recognizing his writing. My dearest Ellie, if you are reading this, it means my time with you is over. Please forgive me for not sharing all of this with you sooner, but I wanted to spare you the worry. Through the years, I took small parts of our savings and invested them. We don't just have the lake cabin. We own 6 other properties, including the historic brownstone building where Clara and Richard are currently living. We also own a significant number of shares in a few companies that are doing better than you can imagine. You are a wealthy woman, my love. You always were, but now it's on paper. My hands were shaking as I sifted through the documents. There were deeds to houses in several neighborhoods, a downtown storefront, a small apartment complex near the university, and yes, the 4-unit brownstone where my daughter resided. Henry had been the silent owner for over a decade, having put everything under the name of a holding company I'd never heard of, and according to the legal papers, I was now the sole director of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew about, with balances that looked like telephone numbers. Henry had been a postal worker for 40 years, but it turned out he had also been an investment genius. Every extra dollar we saved, every small sacrifice we made, he had quietly multiplied it, and I had been completely unaware. In his letter, Henry explained that he kept it all a secret because he didn't want money to change us, or for Clara to know about our true financial standing. You know our girl, Ellie. If she knew we had this kind of money, her perspective might change. I always wanted her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. What a bitter irony. Our daughter had abandoned us, thinking we were simple folks with little to our name, when in truth we had more than she could dream of. That night, sleep was impossible. I wandered through the house, my fingers tracing the outlines of the old furniture, the little trinkets that Clara had always called clutter. I looked at the photos on the mantelpiece, especially one of her as a little girl, sitting on Henry's shoulders, her face alight with a pure, joyful laugh. Where had that little girl gone? When did she become so cold and calculating? The next morning, bright and early, the phone rang. It was Clara. Her voice was different this time, softer, but I had already learned to be suspicious of her changing tones. Mom, how are you? I wanted to let you know we've transferred the money from the cabin and the car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not a fortune, but it should be enough for you to live on for a few months while you find a smaller apartment. My share? I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. Yes, Mom. We couldn't leave you with absolutely nothing. We gave you 25%. That's more than fair, don't you think? We really need the capital for our investment in Brazil. Richard has an amazing opportunity down there. 25% of my own assets. How generous. I see, dear. And when are you leaving? This afternoon. We're all packed. We'll be gone for at least a year. Maybe longer if the business takes off. But don't you worry, Mom. When we come back, we'll help you find a little place. Something more manageable for you. Manageable for me. As if she had any idea what my needs were. All right, Clara. Have a safe journey. Oh, Mom. I knew you would understand. You've always been so reasonable. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand. And for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed until tears streamed down my cheeks, a deep, rumbling laugh I hadn't felt since Henry was alive. The whole situation was just so utterly absurd, it was almost funny. My daughter had effectively robbed me, made me homeless in her own mind, spoken to me with a condescension that was breathtaking, all to finance some get-rich-quick scheme in South America that was probably destined to fail. But the thing that stung the most wasn't the money. It was the casual cruelty with which she had dismissed me. 48 years of my life poured into her, of sacrifices made without a second thought, of a love that I thought was unconditional, and she had wiped it all away with a 90-second phone call. That was the real wound. I went to my computer and checked my bank account. Sure enough, there was a deposit for an amount that they probably thought was magnanimous, but to me, it was an insult. They had sold the lake cabin for a fraction of its worth, no doubt needing a quick sale, and had probably given away Henry's classic Chevy for pocket change. That afternoon, I watched from my living room window as Clara and Richard loaded their suitcases into a waiting taxi. He was wrestling with 2 oversized bags. She was carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly budget. I watched them laugh and kiss, bubbling with excitement for their new life. They never once glanced toward my house, never offered a final wave goodbye. When the taxi disappeared down the street, I sat down in my kitchen with a cup of hot tea and spread Henry's documents across the table. It was time to make some decisions. I could call the police, hire a lawyer, and reclaim everything they had stolen. But a little voice inside me whispered that there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I found the business card for Mr. Davies, the lawyer who had handled Henry's will. He had been at the funeral, offered his sincere condolences, and told me to call him if I needed anything at all. Well, I needed him now. Mrs. Vance, it's a pleasure to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm doing just fine, Mr. Davies. I need to see you as soon as possible. I found some of Henry's papers that I don't quite understand. Of course. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? I'll be there. That night, for the first time in many months, I slept like a stone. I dreamed of Henry. He was sitting in his favorite recliner, reading the newspaper, just like he did every morning. And when he looked up and saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my Ellie. It's about time you started fighting for yourself." I woke up with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But the deep, gnawing sadness that had been my constant companion was gone. In its place was something new. Determination. For the first time since Henry's passing, I had a purpose. I was going to take back what was mine, but I was going to do it on my own terms. The next morning, I dressed with more care than I had in months. I put on a navy blue dress. One Henry always said made my eyes look brighter. I did my hair and put on a touch of lipstick. And when I looked at my reflection, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a very long time. I saw a woman who was strong. Mr. Davies's office was in an old, dignified building downtown with marble floors and tall, sunny windows. He greeted me with a kind smile, but as I laid Henry's documents on his polished desk, his expression shifted from sympathy to utter astonishment. "Mrs. Vance, this is far more than I ever imagined. Henry was a very shrewd man. My goodness, according to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, Mr. Davies. I've been through them. What I need from you is to know my legal options." Mr. Davies explained that everything was impeccably organized, the documents were all legitimate, and that I was, without a doubt, the rightful owner of all those assets. He also confirmed what I already suspected. The sale of the lake cabin was completely illegal, as Clara had no legal authority to sell it. "We can have the house back in your name immediately, Mrs. Vance, and we can also press charges against your daughter for fraud." "No, Mr. Davies. No legal action against her. I want to handle this differently. I want everything to remain under wraps for now. Can you help me with that?" He looked at me with a newfound curiosity, but he nodded. "Of course, Mrs. Vance. You're my client. What do you need me to do?" I need you to quietly recover the lake cabin. Do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale. And I need you to help me establish direct control over all my properties, especially the brownstone where my daughter lives. I understand. It will be a process. It might take a few weeks, but it's entirely possible. Perfect. And Mr. Davies? Absolutely no one is to know that I am behind any of this. Not yet. When I left his office, I felt like I had woken up from a long, painful hibernation. I walked through the busy downtown streets, watching the people, the buildings, the vibrant pulse of life going on all around me. But for me, everything was different. I had a plan. The weeks that followed were the most surreal of my life. On the surface, I was a poor widow, abandoned by her only child. But secretly, I was a wealthy woman, silently orchestrating the recovery of her empire. Mr. Davies was a model of efficiency, calling me every few days with updates on the legal maneuvers. I decided to stay in my house. It was mine, after all, even though Clara probably pictured me moving into a tiny, sad apartment. Every morning I would wake up, eat my breakfast at the table where Henry and I had started our days for nearly half a century, and then I'd take a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors would greet me with that familiar blend of pity and curiosity they save for the recently bereaved. Martha, my neighbor from across the street, approached me one afternoon as I was watering my petunias. "Eleanor, dear, is it true what I hear? That Clara went off to South America and left you all by your lonesome?" "Yes, Martha. She went with Richard. They have a business venture down there." "And how are you going to manage, dear? We all knew Henry wasn't a man of great means." "If only you knew, Martha," I thought. "Don't you worry about me, Martha. I'll be just fine." Do you need anything? I can bring over a casserole, help you with your shopping." "You're very kind, but I'm all right, really." Martha looked at me with an expression I had come to know so well. It was the same look everyone had given me after the funeral. Compassion, mixed with a little bit of relief that my tragedy wasn't theirs. "Well, you know where I am if you change your mind." These conversations happened over and over, with the man at the corner market, the mailman, the lady at the bakery. Everyone spoke to me in that soft, gentle tone reserved for the unfortunate, and I would nod and smile and thank them for their concern. But deep down, a part of me was enjoying the performance. It felt like living in a spy movie. Mr. Davies called me on a Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Vance, I have good news. We were able to nullify the sale of the lake cabin. The people who bought it were unaware the sale was fraudulent, so they were refunded their money without any issue. The property is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Davies. And the brownstone where Clara lives?" "That one is a bit more complex. Technically, you've been the owner all along through the holding company, but we need to make some administrative changes to give you direct control. That should be sorted in another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me posted." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen with a fresh cup of tea and thought about Clara. She had been in Brazil for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard a single word from her. Not a phone call, not an email, not even a postcard. In her mind, I had ceased to exist the moment she got her hands on the money she wanted. But I had a feeling that was all about to change. I decided to pay a visit to the lake cabin. I took the bus out to the coast, the same route Henry and I must have driven 1,000 times. The cabin was exactly as I remembered it, small and painted a cheerful yellow, with a wide porch that looked out over the water. The couple who had briefly owned it had put a few flower pots on the steps, but otherwise, it was untouched. I sat on a bench across the road and just looked at it for a long time. I remembered summer afternoons when Clara was a little girl, splashing in the shallows and building lopsided sandcastles. Henry at the grill, cooking up burgers while I made potato salad in the kitchen. Clara bringing her friends, then her boyfriends, then Richard. All those happy memories that she had managed to distill down to a simple bank transaction. An older man came out of the house next door and saw me sitting there. He wandered over, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just reminiscing." I knew the folks who used to own that cabin. Oh, yes, sad business that. They told us the elderly lady who owned it was very ill and needed to sell in a hurry. We thought it was a great deal, but it turned out the sale wasn't legal. They had to give the house back. Did you meet them personally? No, we did all the business through their agents. But they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother was too unwell. Such a shame. If you only knew how much of a shame it really was, I thought. Well, I'm glad to hear they got their money back. Yes. Thankfully, it all worked out for them. Though now they have to start house hunting all over again. They really loved this spot. I walked away from the lake with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt anymore. It was the ease with which Clara had fabricated stories about me. She had invented an illness for me. She had used my supposed fragility to justify her greed. To her, I wasn't a person with feelings. I was just an obstacle to be managed. That night, I called Mr. Davies again. Mr. Davies, I need your help with one more thing. I want to get Henry's Chevy back too. That will be trickier, Mrs. Vance. The car was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it. How is that possible? Apparently, you signed that power of attorney a few months ago, after your husband's death. Do you recall? And there it was, the moment Clara had set her plan in motion. I had a vague memory of her bringing a stack of papers for me to sign, telling me they were just formalities to handle the funeral expenses and the estate. I had been so lost in my grief that I signed them without reading a single line. How could I have been so naive? I understand, Mr. Davies. Is there any way to recover it? We can certainly try, but it will be a more involved process. We would need to prove that you signed that document under emotional duress or through deception. Let's do it. I want back every single thing they took from me. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a strange new rhythm. In the mornings, I was the poor, forgotten widow everyone believed me to be. I would go to the market, chat with the neighbors, and maintain the illusion. But in the afternoons, I transformed into a businesswoman. I would pore over Henry's documents, talk on the phone with Mr. Davies, and plot my next moves. I learned things about finance and real estate that I never imagined I would need to know. I discovered that Henry had been even more brilliant than I'd realized. Every single one of his investments was carefully thought out. The brownstone where Clara lived, for example, wasn't just generating rental income. It was located in a neighborhood that was rapidly gentrifying, its value skyrocketing. I also discovered that Richard, Clara's husband, was drowning in debt. He had taken out multiple loans using their apartment as collateral, never knowing that he wasn't the actual owner. When the creditors discovered this, he was going to be in a world of trouble. Mr. Davies called me on a Friday with the news I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Vance, we've completed all the paperwork. You now have full and direct control of all your properties. And I also managed to recover Henry's car. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine, a classic car collector. When I explained the situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small finder's fee. That's wonderful news, Mr. Davies. Now, there's just one more thing I need you to do for me. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Vance, are you quite certain you want to do this? Completely certain. She decided I wasn't a necessary part of her life. Now she's about to find out just how necessary I really am. I understand. Do you want me to send it to Brazil? No. I want you to have it delivered to her apartment here. I have a feeling she'll be back to read it very soon. I wasn't wrong. That very afternoon, Martha came hurrying across the street, bursting with the latest neighborhood gossip. Eleanor, you'll never guess what I heard. Richard is in some kind of trouble with the banks. My nephew who works downtown told me they're investigating some loans he took out using their apartment as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't even his. Is that so? Yes. And apparently Clara had no idea. They're saying she's going to have to fly back from Brazil to sort out this whole mess. What a complicated situation. Yes. And the worst of it is, it seems Richard lied to her about the business in Brazil. There was no business. He just wanted to run away from all the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was falling into place just as I had anticipated. Clara had put all her faith in Richard, had destroyed her relationship with me for him, and now she was about to discover that he was not the man she thought he was. That evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the stars. Henry always used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived good lives, watching over their loved ones from above. If that was true, then he was up there somewhere, watching his carefully laid plans unfold. "Thank you, my love," I whispered to the night sky. "Thank you for looking after me, even after you're gone." The very next day, Mr. Davies called me early. "Mrs. Vance, I have an update. Your daughter just landed at the airport. She's by herself." "By herself?" "Yes, it seems Richard stayed in Brazil. The rumor is they had a major falling out." "I see. Did you send the letter?" "I'm having it delivered by courier today. She should receive it by this afternoon." I hung up the phone and stood in my quiet kitchen, a strange mix of nervousness and excitement fluttering in my chest. After so many weeks of silent planning, the first move in my little game was about to be made. Clara was about to learn that her mother was not the helpless victim she had imagined. Clara got to her apartment on Tuesday evening. I knew this because Martha, who seemed to have a network of spies all over town, came over the next morning to give me a full report. "Eleanor, your daughter got back last night. I saw her go in with just one suitcase, but she looked just awful. Pale, with these huge dark circles under her eyes, like she'd been crying the whole flight. And she was alone, completely alone. And the strangest thing, Eleanor, when the doorman asked her for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to get the building manager to let her in with the spare set." Interesting. Richard had the keys, which meant he likely had no intention of coming back. Or perhaps Clara had found out something about him and had fled. Either way, my daughter was back, and she was about to receive my little housewarming gift. Mr. Davies called me that same afternoon. "Mrs. Vance, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your daughter received it personally." "Perfect. How much time did we give her?" 30 days to vacate the premises, as per the legal requirement. "But Mrs. Vance, are you sure about this? She is your daughter, after all." "Mr. Davies, my daughter evicted me from my own life with a 90-second phone call. She sold my most precious memories without a second thought. She treated me like I was garbage. Now she is going to learn that actions have consequences." "I understand. I just wanted to be certain that you had considered all the angles." "I have considered them, Mr. Davies. Every single one." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, picturing Clara's face as she read that letter. The initial confusion, followed by disbelief, and then the dawning horror. She would probably assume it was some kind of mistake, a scam. But when she made a few calls to verify, she would discover that it was all perfectly, terrifyingly legal. The next morning, as if on cue, the phone rang at 8 o'clock sharp. It was Clara, and her voice was thin with panic. Mom, I need to talk to you right now." "Good morning, dear. How was your trip?" "Mom, I don't have time for that. I got a really bizarre letter yesterday. It says I have to be out of my apartment in 30 days. It has to be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this?" "An eviction notice? How strange. Who is it from?" "From some company I've never even heard of. It's called— wait, let me find it. H. Vance Enterprises. Do you know them?" Henry had used his own initial for the company name. The poetry of it was not lost on me. "No, dear. I've never heard of them." "Are you sure the letter is real?" "That's what I need to find out. Mom, I need your help. I don't know what to do. Richard left me in Brazil. He ran off with some other woman, and now I come home to this. I don't understand what is happening." So there it was. Richard had abandoned her. Probably as soon as the money ran out, or when he realized his legal troubles back home were catching up to him. Poor Clara. She had sacrificed her family for a man who wasn't worth the dirt on his shoes. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Where are you now?" "I'm at the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else." The irony was delicious. Now that she was alone, now that the man she had thrown me over for was gone, now she remembered she had a mother. "Of course, dear. Come whenever you like." "I'm on my way." I hung up the phone and looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I changed into a simple gray dress, pulled my hair back in a neat bun, and practiced a look of worried, resigned sympathy. When Clara arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see: a poor, vulnerable widow who had been cast aside by her own daughter. Clara showed up an hour later. When I opened the door, I was genuinely shocked by her appearance. She had lost a lot of weight, the skin under her eyes was bruised with exhaustion, and her expensive clothes were wrinkled and slept in. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Mom," she said, and for a second I thought she was going to hug me, but she stopped herself, as if she suddenly remembered the terms on which we had last parted. "Come in, dear. Would you like some tea?" "Yes, please." We sat at the kitchen table, the very same table where I had first spread out Henry's documents weeks ago. Clara looked small and lost in the big wooden chair, just like she used to when she was a little girl and would come to me with a scraped knee or a playground squabble. "Mom, I am so sorry for the way I left. I know I was awful to you." "That's in the past, dear." "No, it's not. I treated you terribly. I said horrible things, and now—" her voice cracked. "Now I have nobody." "What happened with Richard?" "He left me for a 20-year-old bartender in Rio. It turns out the whole business venture was a lie. He just wanted to escape his debts here and use the money from your cabin to fund his little adventure." "All the debts?" "Yes, Mom. So many debts. It seems he'd been taking out loans for years, using our apartment as collateral. But now I'm finding out he wasn't even the owner of the apartment. How is that even possible?" Here was my chance. "I don't know, dear. These property matters can be very confusing. The problem is, now the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say that because we were married, I'm responsible for them too. And on top of it all, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money. I don't have a job. I have nowhere to go." She broke down completely then, her head in her hands, sobbing with real, genuine despair. And for a fleeting moment, my heart ached for her. I wanted to wrap my arms around her, to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be all right. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice on the phone, the casual way she had disposed of me, the way she had spoken to me as if I were a child. "Have you spoken to a lawyer about the letter?" "I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent everything in Brazil. Richard took what little was left when he ran off with that woman." "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I was thinking, maybe I could stay here with you for a little while, just until I can find a job and get a small place of my own." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. After effectively making me homeless, after selling my things, after treating me like an inconvenience, she now wanted me to be her savior. She wanted the poor widow she had created to rescue her from the wreckage of her own choices. "Of course, dear. This will always be your home." Clara looked up at me, her eyes wide with surprise, as if she couldn't believe it was that easy. "Really, Mom? After everything?" "You are my daughter, Clara. Nothing will ever change that." She stood up, and this time, she did hug me. It was a desperate, clinging hug, the kind of hug a drowning person gives. I hugged her back, but it wasn't the same unconditional embrace as before. This one was measured, calculated. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job right away. I won't be a burden. Don't you worry about that now. Just rest, get yourself together, and then we can figure out your next steps. Clara left that afternoon to collect a few of her things from the apartment. I remained in the kitchen, marveling at how smoothly everything had gone. She had come to me just as I had predicted, broken, desperate, and out of options. And best of all, she didn't suspect a thing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother in need of her pity. But this was only phase 1 of my plan. Having her under my roof would provide the perfect opportunity for phase 2. I was going to let her get comfortable, to feel safe, to believe she had found a soft place to land. And then, when she was least expecting it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by circumstance and being poor by choice. That night, I called Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies, I have another task for you. Name it, Mrs. Vance. I want you to investigate all of Richard's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes, who he owes it to, and what legal avenues we have to untangle my daughter from them. That will take some time, but it's certainly possible. Perfect. And Mr. Davies, I want this kept in the strictest confidence. No one can know that I am behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Vance. May I ask what your ultimate goal is? My goal, Mr. Davies, is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter. But first, she needs to understand what it feels like to truly have nothing. When I hung up, I poured myself a small glass of the good port that Henry had been saving for a special occasion. It had been a long time since I'd had a special occasion quite like this one. The game was afoot, and for the first time in a very long time, I was holding all the cards. Clara moved in the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a single cardboard box, the sum total of her former life. I watched her unpack in her old childhood bedroom, and I could see the humiliation in her every movement. She had gone from a luxury apartment to a room with faded floral wallpaper and posters from her teenage years still tacked to the walls. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said, holding up a large manila envelope. It was tucked away in some of Richard's papers. It has your name on it. It was another one of Henry's envelopes. My heart gave a little jump, but I kept my face neutral. My name? How odd. Yes, look. She showed me the envelope. Sure enough, there was my name in Henry's familiar script. But this envelope was different from the one I had found in the box. This one was slimmer, newer. Maybe Richard found it among Dad's things after he passed and forgot to give it to you, Clara suggested. It's possible. May I see it? I opened the envelope in front of her. Inside was a short note and a small, old-fashioned key. The letter read, Ellie, if you are reading this after finding the main box, it means our Clara is in some kind of trouble. This key opens safe deposit box number 247 at the downtown bank branch. There is something in there that might help you to help her, but use it wisely. All my love, Henry. Clara read the letter over my shoulder. A safe deposit box? Dad had a safe deposit box? I had no idea, I lied. Your father never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's inside? I don't know, dear. Maybe it's best to leave the past in the past. But, Mom, what if there's something important in there? Papers or, I don't know, maybe something valuable that could help us. The desperation in her voice was plain to see. Clara was grasping at any straw, any slim hope of a solution to her problems, and I was going to let her grasp for a little while longer before I revealed the full truth. All right, I said after a well-timed pause. We can go tomorrow. That evening, Clara and I had dinner together for the first time in what felt like an eternity. She had insisted on cooking, trying to make herself useful, but the food was bland and tasted of guilt. She told me more about what had happened in Brazil, and each detail was more sordid than the last. Richard lied about everything, Mom. Not just the business, but the debts, too. I thought he owed a little money, but it turns out it's over $100,000. And the worst part is, he used my name on some of the loans without my knowledge. How is that possible? He forged my signature. When we first got married, I gave him some signed papers to set up our joint bank accounts. I never dreamed he would use them for something like this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't know. It's all so messy. The banks are saying that since we were married, I'm on the hook for all of it anyway. And the divorce? I don't even know where Richard is now. He just disappeared. His phone is off. He's not answering emails. Nothing. It's like he vanished into thin air. Perfect. Richard had scurried away like the coward he had always been, leaving Clara to face the music alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now, my daughter was experiencing the very same thing I had felt when she abandoned me. The sting of being betrayed by someone you trusted completely. I'm so sorry, dear. I had no idea things were this bad. I didn't either, Mom. I thought Richard loved me. I thought we were building a life together. But it turns out I was just a convenient way for him to get access to money and a cosigner. Clara started to cry again. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see him for who he really was? It was tempting to tell her that I had seen the red flags from the very beginning, that I had tried to warn her that Richard never seemed genuine, but that would have shattered my carefully constructed persona of the sympathetic, clueless mother. Love can make us blind sometimes, dear. Don't be so hard on yourself. But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you so badly. I took your home, your car, your memories, all to give to a man who left me the first chance he got. Now we're two broke women trying to get by, and it's all my fault. We'll be all right, Clara. We'll manage. No, it's not all right. We're both in trouble because of my mistakes. You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two broke women trying to survive. If only she knew, I thought, that at that very moment, I had more money than she could possibly imagine, that I was the owner of the very building she had just been evicted from, that I could solve all of her problems with a single phone call. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. The next day, we went to the bank. Clara was a bundle of nerves, vibrating with a desperate hope. I maintained my act of a bewildered widow who didn't understand the first thing about finance. A bank employee led us to the vault, verified my identity, and opened box number 247. Inside was a collection of rare stamps, hundreds of them, all meticulously organized in albums. I recognized them as Henry's lifelong passion. There was also a letter from him, detailing the origin of each stamp and its estimated value. Clara gasped. Mom, this must be worth a fortune. Do you think so? Yes, look at this one, and this one. Mom, Dad saved a treasure here. According to Henry's letter, the stamp collection was worth approximately $200,000. It was a substantial sum, but it was a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of my assets. It was like finding a $20 bill in your coat pocket when you have $1 million in the bank. What do we do with this, Mom? I don't know, dear. They were your father's. But, Mom, we could sell some of them. With this money, you could buy your cabin back, and I could start paying off Richard's debts. There it was again. Even faced with a potential windfall, Clara's first thought was how to use it to clean up the mess Richard had made. She hadn't learned her lesson yet. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay the debts of the man who abandoned you? What other choice do I have, Mom? If I don't start paying something soon, the banks are going to start legal proceedings. And technically, I don't have a penny to my name. Everything was in Richard's name. Think carefully, dear. Once you sell these stamps, they're gone forever. I know, but what else can I do? I can't even get a job with all these legal claims hanging over my head. No employer is going to hire someone with my financial baggage. We took the stamp albums home. Clara spread them out on the kitchen table and spent hours online, researching their value, figuring out which ones to sell and which to keep. It was agonizing to watch her reduce a lifetime of her father's passion to a series of numbers on a spreadsheet. "Mom, I think I can get about $180,000 for the stamps," she announced a few days later, her face a mixture of hope and exhaustion. "It's less than I hoped, but it's enough to pay off the most pressing debts. Are you sure this is what you want to do?" "I have to. If I don't pay something, they'll come after everything. Even this house could be at risk if they can prove some kind of legal connection." How ironic. Clara was worried about losing a house that I secretly owned to pay the debts of a man who had left her, with the money from a collection that had belonged to the very man who had built the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I spoke with a free credit counselor at the community center. She told me to prioritize the debts that are secured by collateral, because those are the ones that can lead to immediate legal action. Clara had grown up so much in just a few weeks. The woman who had sold my belongings without a second thought was now meticulously weighing every financial decision. The hardship had made her more responsible, but it had also made her brittle. That night, as she was sorting through a mountain of threatening letters from creditors, I got a call from Mr. Davies. "Mrs. Vance, I have a full report on Richard's debts. The situation is even worse than we initially thought." "How much worse?" "He owes over $200,000 to various banks, and he also has debts with several private lenders. What's more concerning is that he used falsified documents with your daughter's signature to secure some of these loans." "So Clara is legally responsible?" "It's complicated. If we can prove she was unaware, we might be able to absolve her of some of the debt, but it will be a long and costly legal battle." "How costly?" "For a top-tier lawyer who specializes in this kind of fraud, you're probably looking at $50,000 in legal fees with no guarantee of success." "I see. And what if she just pays the debts?" "If she has the money, that would be the quickest solution. But I highly doubt she has access to that kind of capital." "Mr. Davies, I want you to prepare all the necessary paperwork to get my daughter out of this mess, but don't tell her anything just yet." "You're going to pay for it, Mrs. Vance?" "I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, but this needs to be handled in a very particular way." "Ooh." When I hung up, I found Clara in the living room, staring at the stamp albums with a look of profound sadness. She looked lost, like a child who had broken a precious family heirloom and didn't know how to fix it. "What are you thinking about, dear?" "About Dad. About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life." "Your father loved you very much, Clara. He would understand." "No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, to be selfless. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my own mother for a man who turned out to be a con artist. I sold my family's memories for cash. I've ruined everything he worked so hard to build." For the first time since her return, I heard genuine remorse in her voice. It wasn't just regret for the consequences of her actions, but a true acknowledgement that she had done something morally wrong. "People make mistakes, dear. The important thing is that we learn from them." "But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I ever fix the damage I've caused?" And there it was, the question I had been waiting for. Clara was finally ready to confront the truth of her actions. But it wasn't time to reveal my final card. Not yet. First, I had to let her fall just a little bit further. The next few days were the final stage of my plan. Clara made the difficult decision to sell the bulk of the stamp collection, keeping only a few that had sentimental value. I watched as she made appointments with dealers, researched prices, and negotiated sales. It was painful to see her turn a lifetime of her father's joy into a series of commercial transactions, but it was a necessary part of her education. She had to feel the true weight of her choices. "Mom, I got $180,000 for the stamps," she told me one afternoon, her voice flat as she counted out the cash on the kitchen table. "It's less than I hoped, but it's enough to clear the most urgent debts." "Are you certain you want to do this?" "I don't have a choice. If I don't pay someone soon, they'll start seizing assets. Even this house could be at risk if they can establish a legal link. The irony of it all was almost too much to bear. Angela was terrified of losing a house that I owned, to pay the debts of a man who had abandoned her, with money from a collection that had belonged to the very man whose secret fortune could have saved her from all of this. And how will you decide which debts to pay? I spoke to that credit counselor again. She advised me to prioritize the loans that have real collateral attached, as those are the ones that could lead to property seizure or immediate foreclosure. Clara had matured so much in these last weeks. The woman who had carelessly sold my things was now a diligent student of financial responsibility. The suffering had made her more responsible, but it had also made her more fragile. That night, as she was organizing a stack of debt paperwork, I got a call from Mr. Davies. "Mrs. Vance, I have significant news. We've managed to locate Richard." "Where is he?" "In Rio, just as your daughter suspected. But here's the interesting part. He's attempting to secure Brazilian residency through a fraudulent marriage to that young woman your daughter mentioned." "A fake marriage?" "Yes. It seems the girl needs legal status, and he needs a way to stay in the country without being extradited. But most importantly, we've found concrete evidence that he deliberately falsified your daughter's signature with the intent to defraud the banks and flee the country. Which means Clara can be cleared of the debts." "With this evidence, yes. We can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter won't be liable for a single penny of what Richard did behind her back." It was perfect. I had a way to save Clara from all her financial troubles without her ever suspecting that I had the money to do it myself. "Mr. Davies, I want you to initiate the legal proceedings immediately. But don't say a word to my daughter yet. I want the process to be completely finalized before I tell her. I don't want to give her any false hope." "Understood. This will likely take about 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Perfect." When I hung up, Clara looked at me curiously. "Who was that, Mom?" "Just a wrong number. Someone looking for Mrs. Gable from down the street." Lying had become second nature to me. With each passing day, I grew more comfortable in this double life. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother Clara believed me to be. On the other, I was a wealthy woman, silently orchestrating my daughter's salvation and her education. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Clara grapple with decisions she had never had to make in her life: how to stretch a dollar at the grocery store, how to negotiate with hostile creditors, how to find a job when your credit history is in ruins. It was a cruel but necessary lesson. "Mom, I went on 3 job interviews today," she told me one evening, her face etched with exhaustion. 2 of them told me they couldn't hire me because of my outstanding legal issues. The third one offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. Are you going to take it? I have to. The pay is terrible, but it's better than nothing, and I can work at night, which leaves my days free to keep looking for something better. To see my daughter, who had lived a life of comfort for more than 40 years, preparing to scrub toilets at night, it broke my heart. But it also filled me with a strange sense of pride. She was finally facing her reality head-on, without expecting a handout. Are you sure you can handle such physical work? I'll have to learn. I can't keep being a burden on you, Mom. It's bad enough that you're letting me live here for free. This is your home, Clara. No, Mom. This is your home. And I'm here because you're generous. But I'm not going to take advantage of that forever. One night, while Clara was at her first shift, Martha came over for tea. She sat in my kitchen looking at the family photos on the wall. Eleanor, I have to ask you something. Did you have any idea that Clara would come back like this? What do you mean? Well, when she left, she was so confident, so arrogant. She talked about the grand new life she was going to have in Brazil, about how successful Richard was. And now here she is, back home, completely broken, working a cleaning job, living in her childhood bedroom. Life has a funny way of humbling us, Martha. Yes, but it's more than that. I've been watching Clara these last few days, and she seems different. Not just sad, but humble. like she's learned something important. Martha had always been a sharp observer. What do you think she's learned? I think she's learned the value of the things she always took for granted, like having a mother who loves her no matter what. Perhaps. Martha, can I tell you something? When Clara left and treated you so poorly, many of us in the neighborhood thought you would never forgive her. But here you are, taking care of her, giving her a home when she has nowhere else to go. She's my daughter, Martha. Yes, but not every mother would do what you're doing, especially after being treated the way you were. If only Martha knew the whole story, that I had the power to end all of Clara's suffering. But I was choosing to let her endure it a little longer, so that the lesson would truly stick. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother does. But I also think Clara needs to fully understand what she lost when she turned her back on you. What do you mean? I think she needs to value you not just as the mother who rescues her, but as the strong woman who built a life for herself for almost 50 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you. Martha had hit the nail right on the head. That was the entire point of my plan. I didn't want Clara to come back to me out of sheer desperation. I wanted her to come back out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you suppose that happens? I think it's already happening. I've watched her these past few days, Eleanor. The way she speaks to you now is completely different. She's no longer the daughter who issues orders or treats you like a child. She's a grown woman who is truly grateful to have a mother like you. That night, when Clara came home from her job, I saw it too. She was exhausted, but she carried herself with a new kind of dignity. She had earned those few dollars with her own 2 hands, and that meant something to her. How was your first night? Hard, but not as bad as I thought. The other women who worked there were really helpful. One of them, a Mrs. Johnson, showed me some tricks to clean more efficiently. Mrs. Johnson? Yes. She's 65 years old and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 small children. She says it's not the job she dreamed of, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. She said something that really made me think. She told me there are 2 kinds of people who end up in this line of work. Those who are here because they never had any opportunities, and those who are here because they threw away the opportunities they had. She asked me which group I belonged to. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth, that I had every opportunity in the world, a loving family, a stable home, an inheritance, and I threw it all away to follow a man who was worthless. What did she say? She laughed and said, "Well, honey, at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you a step ahead of most people." Clara poured herself a glass of water and sat down at the table with me. Mom, I want you to know something. These last few weeks have been the hardest of my life, but they've also been the most important. Why is that? Because I'm finally starting to understand what really matters. It's not money. It's not living in a fancy apartment. It's not impressing other people. It's having people who truly love you, who are there for you when everything else falls apart. Clara, no. Let me finish. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I stole what Dad left for you. I treated you like you were an inconvenience. And now here I am, expecting you to forgive me and take care of me. I already forgave you, dear. But I haven't forgiven myself, and I won't, until I can prove that I've really changed, that I've learned my lesson. Mr. Davies called me the next morning. Mrs. Vance, I have excellent news. The legal process is nearly complete. We can absolve your daughter of all of Richard's debts. It was time. After weeks of watching Clara struggle, work, and reflect, the moment had finally come to show her that she had never been alone, that she had always had a guardian angel watching over her. Mr. Davies, I'd like you to schedule a meeting. It's time for my daughter to learn the whole truth. Mr. Davies arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Clara that I had made an appointment with a lawyer who might be able to help her with her legal troubles, but I kept the details vague. She agreed to come, though she was worried about the cost. "Mom, I don't have money for a lawyer. I can barely cover my basic expenses." "Don't you worry about that now, dear. Let's just go and hear what he has to say." We arrived at Mr. Davies's office right on time. Clara was wearing her best clothes, which now hung loosely on her thinner frame. She was wringing her hands, clearly expecting more bad news to add to her growing list of problems. Mr. Davies greeted us with his usual professional smile. Miss Vance, thank you for coming." "Thank you for seeing us," Clara replied. "Though I should warn you, my financial situation is very complicated, and I probably can't afford your regular fees." "That's precisely what we're here to discuss," Mr. Davies said, sharing a quick look with me. "But first, I'd like you to review these documents." Mr. Davies handed Clara a thick file folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression slowly morphing from confusion to disbelief. "I don't understand. These documents say that Richard forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, that I'm not responsible for his debts." "That's correct. We have been investigating your case for the past few weeks. We've uncovered enough evidence to prove that you were a victim of identity theft and fraud. But how is that possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have the money for something like this." Mr. Davies looked at me. It was my cue. "Clara, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it, Mom?" I took a deep breath. After weeks of playing a part, it was finally time to reveal the truth. "Your father left me more than you knew. Much more." "What do you mean?" "Mr. Davies, show her the other documents." Mr. Davies produced a second folder and handed it to Clara. This time, the documents were the property deeds, the bank statements, the investment portfolios, the entire fortune that Henry had secretly built. Clara read in stunned silence for several minutes. Her face was a canvas of conflicting emotions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally, a dawning, horrified comprehension. "Mom, this says you're the owner of the building where I was living." "Yes, and that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments." "Yes. This means when I sold the lake cabin, it was your house. The sale was illegal. I've already recovered it." Clara stared at the papers, her mind reeling. "How long have you known?" "Since the day you called me from the library." "You knew all of this when I came back from Brazil, begging for your help?" "Yes." "You knew you could solve all my problems when you watched me cry myself to sleep every night?" "Yes." A long, tense silence filled the room. Clara slowly closed the folders and looked me directly in the eye. "Why, Mom? Why would you let me suffer like that when you could have helped me?" This was the question I had been preparing for weeks. "Because there was a lesson you needed to learn, and there was no other way to teach it to you." "What lesson?" "You needed to learn the value of the things you had thrown away. The value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, you didn't just take money from me. You took my dignity. You took my trust. You took my love." Clara began to cry, but these were not the tears of self-pity I had seen over the last few weeks. These were tears of profound understanding. "I abandoned you when you needed me most." "Yes." "I treated you like you were garbage." "Yes." "And you saved me anyway." "Yes." "But not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by throwing money at your problems so you could go on making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn how to save yourself." Mr. Davies discreetly cleared his throat. "Miss Vance, your mother has covered all the legal expenses to absolve you of Richard's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were fraudulently sold. You are completely free of all legal and financial entanglements. And the cleaning job I got? You can quit if you want to, I said. But I hope you don't. Why? Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when life was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, and the importance of appreciating every single dollar you earn. Clara wiped her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter who needed her mother. It was the look of a grown woman who respected another woman. Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you a long time ago, dear. The real question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes, Clara. The important thing is what we do after we realize we've made them. Mr. Davies quietly excused himself, leaving us alone in his office. Clara and I sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the enormity of what had just happened. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I think I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson is that? That there is nothing more valuable in this world than having someone who loves you unconditionally. These past few weeks, the only thing that kept me going was knowing that I had a home to come back to with you. That no matter how badly I had messed up my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Clara. I know, but I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it, every single day, with my actions, not just my words. We left Mr. Davies's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer a mother and daughter bound by habit and obligation. We were two grown women who had chosen each other, after passing through the most difficult test imaginable. The weeks that followed were a time of rebuilding, but not in the way Clara might have expected. Even though she now knew I had the resources to solve all her problems, she made the decision to keep her night job cleaning offices. Mom, I need to see this through, she told me one afternoon as she was getting into her work clothes. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened. Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. It's not a punishment. It's a reminder of who I was and who I want to be now. I watched her put on her simple work uniform, something that would have been unthinkable for her just a few months ago. But there was a new confidence in her posture, a new purpose in her movements. She was no longer the broken woman who had shown up at my door. She was someone who had found her dignity in hard, honest work. Martha came to visit that afternoon, as she had done every few days since Clara's return. Eleanor, there are some very strange rumors floating around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? People are saying that you're not as poor as everyone thought. Someone saw Clara coming out of a very fancy lawyer's office downtown, and then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. That costs a lot of money, Eleanor. Martha knew me too well to be fooled for long. What is it you want to know, Martha? I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been deceiving me. I poured her a cup of tea and sat down across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. Henry left me more than anyone knew, Martha. Much more. How much more? Enough that Clara and I will never have to worry about money again. Aurora was quiet for a long moment, processing this new information. And why did you pretend to be poor all these months? Because I needed Clara to learn a lesson she couldn't learn any other way. I told her the whole story. The cruel phone call, my plan for a silent revenge, the weeks of watching her hit rock bottom, and the final revelation in Mr. Davies's office. Eleanor, that is both brilliant and terrible at the same time. Terrible? Yes, because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped her. But also brilliant, because I understand exactly why you did it. You do? Yes. Angela needed to learn the value of what she had lost. If you had just given her the money to fix her problems, all she would have learned is that there's always someone there to bail her out of her bad decisions. Exactly. But Eleanor, didn't it hurt you to see her suffer like that? Every single day. Every night I heard her crying in her room. Every morning I saw her get up, exhausted and defeated, to go to work. But I knew that if I rescued her too soon, the lesson wouldn't stick. And do you think it has? See for yourself. Clara knows she has access to enough money to live a comfortable life, but she's chosen to keep her job. She knows she could move into a nicer place, but she's decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about her debts, but she's using her own small savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women? Yes. She's become friends with the women she works with, and she's using some of the money she's earned cleaning offices to help a coworker who's struggling to pay for her son's daycare. Martha smiled. That's not the Clara who went to Brazil. No, she's not. This Clara understands that money is a tool, not a destination. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions. That night, when Clara came home from work, she found me reading in the living room. Mom, I have to tell you something. Today, Mrs. Johnson asked me if I was the daughter of the wealthy widow from the other side of town. What did you tell her? I told her yes, that you have enough money that I don't have to work. And do you know what she asked me next? What? She asked me why I was still working, so I told her. I told her it was because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And what did she say? She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly wealthy." Mrs. Johnson is a very wise woman. She is. And she made me realize something important. It's not about how much money you have, but how you use it and what it means to you. Clara came and sat on the sofa next to me. Mom, I've made a decision. I'm going to keep living here with you, but not as a child who's come back home to her parents. I want to be here as a grown woman who is choosing to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? The difference is, I'm going to pay my share of the bills. I'm going to contribute to the household. And I'm going to treat this as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. Clara, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do, Mom. I need our relationship to be different than it was before. Before, I was a daughter who took her mother's love for granted. Now, I want to be a grown woman who values and nurtures the most important relationship in her life. And your job? I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to go back to school. I want to train to do something more meaningful with my life, but I want to do it step by step, earning every opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes. I want to study social work. These past few weeks have shown me how many people are out there, struggling, with no one to support them. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through. It was perfect. Clara hadn't just learned to value what she had. She had found a way to turn her painful experience into something positive. And what about Richard? Mr. Davies told me he was arrested in Brazil for marriage fraud. He's going to be deported soon. But honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That chapter of my life is over. You don't feel any anger? No. In a strange way, Richard did me a favor. If he hadn't betrayed me and abandoned me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I hadn't hit rock bottom, I never would have learned to truly value what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed with a heart full of peace. My plan had worked better than I could have ever imagined. Clara had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she had emerged from the ordeal a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. Henry would have been so proud. 6 months later, our life had settled into a new, comfortable rhythm that neither of us could have imagined before. Clara excelled in her social work studies, and I decided to use some of our resources to establish a foundation to help women facing domestic violence and financial abuse. Mom, the letter from the university came, Clara announced one morning, walking into the kitchen with an envelope in her hand. I got into the master's program. I start next semester. But Mom, I want you to know, I'm going to pay for it myself, with my own savings. I've been putting money aside from my job at the community center. The salary wasn't much, but she had learned to live simply and to value every dollar she earned. Are you sure? We can easily afford the tuition. I know, but I need to do this on my own. It's part of who I am now. Martha came to visit that afternoon, as she did every Friday. She had become a trusted confidant to both of us, a fascinated observer of our transformation. Eleanor, I have to confess something, she said, pouring herself a second cup of tea. When this all started, I thought you were being incredibly cruel to Clara. And what do you think now? Now, I think you are the wisest mother I have ever known. Look at your daughter, just look at her. It was true. The Clara who was in the living room, studying for her exams, was a world away from the woman who had left for Brazil all those months ago. This Clara possessed a quiet confidence that came from within, a self-assurance that was built on her own accomplishments, not on material things. Did you know I saw Clara at the grocery store yesterday? She was buying groceries for a family she's helping through her work. She hadn't told me about that. And when I asked her why she was using her own money instead of the center's budget, she told me that some needs can't be measured in official budgets. That night, Clara and I had dinner on the porch, a new tradition for us. It was our time to talk about our days, to make plans for the future, and to simply enjoy each other's company. Mom, I got a strange letter today, she said, pushing a piece of lettuce around her plate. From who? From Richard. My whole body tensed. Richard? He wrote to you? From where? From a prison in Brazil. Apparently, he was sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter, he says he's sorry for everything and wants my forgiveness. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I don't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's like that part of my life happened to someone else, decades ago. Are you going to write back? No. Not because I hate him, but because there's nothing left to say. The Clara who married him doesn't exist anymore, and this new Clara has nothing to say to him. I was so impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had forged an inner strength from the fires of her own mistakes. Do you know what this whole experience has taught me, Mom? What's that? That true love isn't the kind that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the kind that teaches you what you need to learn, even when it's painful. That's a hard lesson to learn. Edward told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me that I deserved a life of luxury without any effort. You taught me that true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and genuine connection. That night, after Clara had gone to her room to study, I sat on the porch by myself, looking up at the stars and thinking of Henry. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt that I had fulfilled that promise in the best way possible. I hadn't taken care of her by giving her money. I had taken care of her by teaching her how to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn how to solve them on her own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the lake cabin together for the first time since I had gotten it back. Clara had been hesitant to go before, saying she needed more time to process everything. Are you ready? I asked her as we got into Henry's old Chevy. I think so. The drive was quiet, but comfortable. When we arrived, Clara just sat in the car for a moment, looking at the little yellow house where we had spent so many summers. It looks exactly the same, she said finally. Some things don't change, but others do. I'm not the same person who sold this house. We went inside together. The cabin was clean and tidy, just as Henry and I had always kept it. Clara walked through each room, touching the old furniture, looking at the faded family photos on the walls. Mom, I want to apologize. You already have, dear. No, I want to apologize for this house specifically. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all of our family memories to a number on a bank statement. It's forgiven. This house represents 40 years of summers, of birthdays, of holidays. Dad built that porch with his own 2 hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim at that beach, and I turned it all into cash to fund a con man's vacation. She sat down on the old sofa where Henry used to read the Sunday paper. Do you know what hurts the most? What? That when I sold it, I didn't feel a thing. It was just a property. But being here again, I can feel Dad in every corner of this place. I can hear his laugh, smell his coffee, see his reading glasses on the table. He's here, Clara. He's always been here. I know, and I also know that he would be proud of how you handled all of this. We spent the rest of the day at the cabin, cooking together, tidying up, and making small repairs. It felt like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place, but with the values that the place represented. As the sun began to set, we sat on the porch that Henry had built, looking out at the calm water. Mom, I have an idea. What is it? I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women who are escaping situations of domestic violence. A safe place where they can stay while they get back on their feet. It was the perfect suggestion. Henry would have loved the idea of his beloved cabin being used to help other families. I think that's a beautiful idea, dear. We can use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can oversee the program as part of my work. Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into something like that, Mom? The best sanctuaries are the ones we share. Your father always said that a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to people who need a little love. He was right. Henry had always been generous with our home, always inviting friends and neighbors who needed a place to stay for a while. We drove home that night with a new project and a completely healed relationship. We were no longer a mother and daughter bound by duty or need. We were two women who had chosen to build a life together, a life based on love, respect, and a shared purpose. That night, before I fell asleep, I had a little talk with Henry in my mind. We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what really matters. And for the first time since he had passed, I felt like he answered me. I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think. Justice had come, not in the form of revenge, but as education. Not as a punishment, but as a transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained a real relationship, built on a foundation so strong that no future storm could ever shake it. That was my story for today. I tell a new one every single day, so make sure to follow and click that little bell so you don't miss out on tomorrow's story. And if you'd like to hear another surprising tale, you can click on one of the videos you see on the screen right now. I'll see you tomorrow.